Welcome to the Unspoken Truth. I'm your host, Rob Bruss.
And I'm Edward R. Anderson from Minnesota.
G'day, Ed. How we doing, mate?
Living the dream, Robbie. How about you?
Yeah, really good, man. Just put your mic back a little bit there. It's a little bit loud there. We're going to blow the people's ears up, and there it is. Right, we're going to get it right. So
just want to go on the record that my mic is bigger than his mic.
It sure is. The old Blue Yeti mic does the trick, man. They last forever, those things, which are really good. Welcome to the show today, folks. If this is your first time here, welcome. It's great to have you here while Ed takes his phone calls and gets himself organized. If you're back for more, welcome back. Thank you so much for your support. This is the Unspoken Truth, where we go behind the mainstream media. We have a look at what the narrative is telling us, and we give you the information that you need to make the decisions that affect you and your family. Today, we're going to be talking about the crazy climate zealots and the people that think we're all going to boil to death. We're in the era of global boiling, apparently. No more global warming. Remember, it was changed from global warming to climate change because they couldn't prove that the world was warming, and now they want us to expect that it was boiling. Oh my God, these people are crazy. Ed has a great report for us today, folks, about who these people are and where all of this propaganda comes from. So let's get started. Set the frame for me. Who is it? Is it the UN that's causing all of this? What's going on?
Well, I don't want a spoiler alert. I do reveal it in my little presentation, which is about 2 minutes long, so it's not a very, very long report. But it is revealing. It is there is something to this. This isn't a conspiracy theory. You know, this is all provable stuff. And this is all about being aware, right? That's what this program here is all about, is making people aware. It's getting people outside the matrix and having them take a look at what's real. And it is a constant battle because we're up against an organized team, a very well funded, very sophisticated, and they have an objective in mind. So, you know, we might be kind of yelling into the abyss with no one really, hearing us. But, at the very least, you and I have a little cathartic experience.
At least we get it off our chest.
Yeah, that's right.
Another frustrating thing for me, Ed, is that, when you raise your children, you raise them to do the right thing. I created a little mantra for my daughter when she was little because she had a hard time at school. She had a hard time adjusting and stuff. And I said to her, we're going to live by three rules. We're always going to help other people. We're going to do the right thing, and we're never going to tell a lie. And when somebody is coming to you and you're feeling upset about something, then you can ask yourself, are they doing the right thing? Are they trying to help me, or are they telling a lie? And if one of those three things is off, you'll feel off, and then at least you'll know why you feel off. And it was a tool that I gave to her when she was probably 7 or 8. She was in primary school. She was really little. And I used to help her to navigate those challenging days at school for her. And I would ask her those questions and always bring her back to the center. So that way she had like a reference point, because she was all over the place all the time. These people were not nice. The boys were not nice. The girls were not nice. I don't like school. And she had a hard time with it. So if I figured if we had a center point, then we could kind of have a place to reference our life from. And when I first started doing this unspoken truth thing, and, when I woke up to everything that was going on in the world, was I realized I'd been psyoped with the worldwide flu. And when I realized I'd been psyoped, I started to look a little bit closer. And then I started to listen a bit harder to my brother, who's a conspiracy theorist from a long way back, right? But he's not a conspiracy theorist. He's just somebody who uses his objective thinking and looks at it and goes, well, maybe that's not true. Maybe there's something else going on here. And you kind of highlighted it really well for me personally then when you said, this is a constant battle. It's a battle against good and evil, and it's a battle for control of your mind. You're at war, and they're weaponizing your virtue. They're weaponizing your pronouns. They're weaponizing all sorts of strange things in society that make you feel a certain way. And as you say, they're very, very sophisticated. But what you have to remember, folks, is you're a sovereign human being, and nobody actually makes you feel anything. That is the one fundamental, underlying, unspoken truth of being a human being. No one makes you feel anything. The government doesn't make you angry. You're angry about the government. The neighbors next door are not annoying you because they're using their leaf blower at 6 o'clock in the morning, or they're drilling in their renovation for the 12th week straight. They're not annoying you. You're annoyed by those things. And I think that is one of the fundamental unspoken truths about being a human, that nobody can annoy you and nothing can actually affect you unless you allow it to. but you have a sophisticated enemy that uses psychology on you, and it's very, very difficult. So why don't we take a little look at your report and come back and pull back on that thread? What do you reckon?
All right, let's do it. Okay, have you ever felt like you cannot get through an hour of your day without being bombarded about a climate change story? Is this just a coincidence, or could there actually be a single organization responsible for coordinating the story and disseminating this disinformation throughout the world? Actually, there is. Let's talk about it. So once again, one of my predictions has turned out to be true. I said on a few occasions that I thought that there was a coordinated effort behind this climate change story, and that there's probably one organization actually behind it. Now, we know who invented this made-up crisis, right? The WEF, the IMF, the World Economic Forum. But who's in charge of the actual day-to-day propaganda? There actually is an organization. It's called Covering Climate Now. Not a very inspiring name, but so it's called CCN, not to be confused with CNN. Okay, this is an actual organization that was founded in 2019. It was founded by the Columbia Journalism Review and The Nation magazine with the following mission statement. We help our news media colleagues cover the defining story of our time with the rigor and urgency that it deserves. Okay, so this organization has over 400 media members throughout the world. Let me read off a few of them. Let's see, they have Reuters, CBS News, NBC, Bloomberg, MSNBC, Telemundo, Al Jazeera, and a lot more. And let me read another quote from this organization. CCN believes their project is, quote, the biggest effort ever undertaken to organize the world press around a single topic. In layman's terms, propaganda. So their mission is to insert climate change into every single story that the media covers, regardless of what the topic is. Somehow, climate change is supposed to play a role in that story, if it's a bad story anyway, right? So every hour of every day, globally, we are bombarded with climate change stories.
Earth is even hotter than ever, at least as long as we've been keeping record.
Unprecedented temperatures on a global scale.
Climate change, El Nino, a warming Atlantic, and it's just the first week of July.
Climate change could be more devastating than COVID.
The climate's catastrophe, emergency. The big giant map behind me is North America. On the other side of Earth, we have in Antarctica record temperatures there as well. The scientists say this is an alarm bell for how rapidly climate change is happening.
In Washington today, and my tiny little nipples went to France.
What did he just say?
The White House Reception Committee greeted the prime rib roast minister, and I do the cha-cha like a sissy girl. I like a do the cha-cha.
So there it is. One more little mystery solved. There is an actual coordinated effort with one organization behind it in order to promote this climate change propaganda. You need to be a critical thinking person. The information they are putting out are lies, half-truths, and distortions. But this is the messaging that they are using every day to make our lives more difficult and to take control of our lives. So they want to take control of the energy, they want to take control of the food, and they want to take control of the money system. In effect, they want to take control of you. So start taking steps now to protect your personal freedoms as much as you can. Reduce your exposure to the bank, put a lot of your money into gold and silver, and establish streams of passive recurring income. Ed Anderson, live from Minnesota, signing out.
I love a little bit of Steve Carell, man. He always makes me laugh. He's such a great actor, isn't he?
Yeah.
You know, whenever they talk about climate change, that's actually what I hear.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's what you inserted that for. That's the point you're trying to get across there. That's just gobbledygook gibberish. And why do you think, Ed, why do you think people are so easily swayed by the conversation and so gullible?
Well, a few things. One is people have lives to live. They're busy. They're busy going to work, raising kids, living their lives. Right? They don't have the part of the time or the mental energy or the inclination to go home every night and decode everything. They just want to. So they put on the TV and it's part of their routine, right? It's part of their day, and they don't have time to dissect whether this news they're giving to them is real or not. So they just take it in. Now they might be relatively sophisticated, and they take it in, discerningly. But I think most people just don't have the time to sit and argue with mentally. They don't have to do research, and people only have so many hours in the day, right? So that's part of it. And another part of it is most people in our society right now are products of generations of really bad parenting and a really bad school system, generations of indoctrination. So we've had people now who are, they've been indoctrinated. We have parents right now who are products themselves of this indoctrination system. So when their kids go to school learning all this garbage, the parents don't correct them because they're taught the same stuff, right? So then it becomes a self-fulfilling loop. And at this point, undoing it is going to be a really big project. We have to. I don't know, what's the term, Rob, when you program a person? I think there's a phrase. Maybe that's it.
Deprogramming. Yeah.
We have millions of people around the world who have to be deprogrammed, or red pill. There's another phrase for it. People, and every once in a while you hear these stories of a person who converted to Jesus and his life is different. He's born again. Those stories are here and there, but most people are. A good example is my younger son. My younger son never watches these podcasts, so he won't mind me telling the story. So he won't hear this. But my younger son, he's kind of a worker bee. He works at Walmart, which is fine. It's honest work. He's a really good worker. They love him there and all the rest of it. But he has no particular ambition. For him, that's his life. Right? He goes to work, does his job, comes home, and usually goes on his computer. He's a very, very simple, not an ambitious person. Doesn't want to travel the world. Doesn't want to be particularly wealthy or anything. He's a very, and so. So when I sit and lecture to him about, the modern monetary theory, and his eyes start to roll.
Oh my God, again?
Right, again. So I think he's typical of most people out there. Is they're just living their lives, man, and they will take things as they come. So one day, he's gonna wake up and he's gonna have to learn what a CBDC is, and he'll deal with it when the time comes, right? I don't know. What do you think? What do you think is?
Yeah, I think you might be bang on there. Just people are distracted by 1,000 other things in their life. There's cost of living pressures that they have. They've got to go to work and have a job, and they've got to pay bills. They've got to pay the rent, pay the mortgage. There's other things in their life that they focus on. What do I care about climate change? Okay, you say it's a hot day. Okay, cool. Is that because of us? Like, people just are accepting of the facts because they're trusting. And, that says to me that people are good at their heart, and you can keep the faith in humanity if people are believing that what the authorities are telling you is the right thing. But that's the mistake that they make, is because when you continue to believe what the authorities are telling you is the right thing, it perpetuates their control over you. They want to control everything from what you put on, meaning the clothes you wear because it's so hot outside because of what you've done, and to everything to how you cook your food in your kitchen. No more gas in your kitchen. They're trying to control every aspect of your life. And you said right at the start, they're a very smart and sophisticated enemy. And we saw the enemy actually mobilizing and maneuvering on all of us just in the last couple of months with the World Health Organization pandemic treaty. So the WHO pandemic treaty brings all of the countries of the world together and says, we're the World Health Organization, not your country, the World Health Organization. So if there's another pandemic and that actually happens, why don't we all agree that we come together and we'll formulate the response together, and we'll formulate the response and then give it to you guys, and then you guys implement it in your country. Now, in theory, it kind of makes sense, there's a centralized body that brings everybody together and everybody can have a discussion about how things are going to get done. But the thing is, that's not how it works, because the WHO comes along and says, this is how it's going to be. And this CCN treaty thing is exactly that. So it's a group of unelected people, unelected bureaucrats that are driven by some other nefarious force who leverage the world's media to actually communicate their message. And if they're the centralized authority for the message and they're seen as the authority by the media, well, it's no surprise that the media go to that centralized place, and that's where all the scientists are. That's where they do all the work for me. I'm inherently lazy. The type of reporting that I do is not investigative reporting. It's the aggregation of other news media that's out there. And if these people are aggregating news about climate change and about the weather and about all those sorts of things, then I'm going to go to them as my trusted source. So it's no surprise that these media outlets are using something like that. But it also says to me that they're useful idiots, because those reporters that are sitting there going, it's the hottest day in history, or climate changes. I look at these people and go, are you seriously reading that off the teleprompter? If you do really believe that, you're a journalist. And by being a journalist, you are naturally curious. So if you're naturally curious, why wouldn't you just ask the question, well, how? Are you sure? Show me. Where's the evidence? You just ask a series of follow-up questions. We were laughing about that yesterday, right?
Yeah.
These people don't give any follow-up questions, but the journalists don't do their job either. All they're doing is spouting the propaganda from some third party, but they're like, well, we can't go and verify it. That's what we pay the money to them for, because that's what they would do. They'd pay the money to get the actual media, which seems really credible when you get it. Look, we got it from them. Look, it's real. It's real. They'll hold it up and show it's real.
It's written down.
All the world scientists agree that this is real. The thing that they agree on that is happening faster. It's worse than they thought it would be. Show me them.
Every single one. Every single scientist in the world.
Show me. Which one? Where's the report? Show me. Document it for me. Okay, there's 400 of them. Put them all in a document and prove to me that's actually true. Because the burden of proof has to be on them. It can't be on me just to accept it all and say, well, who are the scientists? You won't even tell me who they are. Then I have to go away and do all the work. You're telling me that you've got 400 scientists, or however many you've got, and you're telling me that they're all saying the same thing. Show me. Prove to me that that's actually happening, because I can't see any of it. And then they will just dismiss you. And I've seen Labor politicians do this in the Australian Parliament. They're like, we know that you're a climate change denier because you just don't agree with anything that any of these scientists say. And when the other politician says, well, show me which scientists, they're like, well, all of them. Why don't you believe any of them? And they just dismiss you in some generality like that. There's a media company here in Australia. We've talked about them before. They're called Juice Media. They're pretty big on YouTube. They do these like political comedy skits.
Yep.
It's very funny.
Yep.
And yesterday they did one, which was maybe the funniest one I've ever seen, and not for the reason that you think. It's all just a big piss take of the Australian government and both sides of politics, but they're greenies at heart, right? And they're saying that Australia is responsible for the ocean rising in the Southwest Pacific. And they put up logos of these companies that are responsible for climate change because they mine for fossil fuels. But then I think to myself, the hypocrisy is just so outrageous. It's so unbelievable. Because if you really believed anything that came from your mouth, because your mouth is full of shit, if you really believed any of it, you wouldn't be on YouTube, because you wouldn't use electricity, because you believe in your heart of hearts that you have to reduce your carbon footprint to zero, because we need to reduce our carbon footprint to zero. That's what net zero is. Okay, that means you turning off all the lights because you're burning coal and natural gas to actually get the electricity in your home. You're not allowed to charge the batteries in the camera that you're recording on either, because that comes from their coal-powered batteries in the lithium batteries that are in your video cameras that you're recording on. You can't read off the teleprompter. You can't use the music. You can't upload because you're not allowed to use the internet because you need electricity for that. The hypocrisy in these greenest zealots is in their alarmism is just gobsmacking. And I can't believe that they are so stupid. And I can't believe that people are so stupid that they swallow stuff like Juice Media saying that they're saying that these companies, this gas company, this coal company, this mining company is responsible for the ocean rising in the Southwest Pacific. Like, what? What? Okay. Show me how. Show me exactly how you came to that conclusion. Prove it. Prove it. because you can't just make it a claim. I can't just go out there and make a claim about some random thing that apparently affects every person on planet Earth and not have any evidence to back it up. I can't, because I'll just look like an idiot. And that's how these people look. But for some strange reason, everybody agrees with them. They just agree that, okay, yeah, it's real. It's not real. There is no, what about all the volcanoes? What about Nord Stream? What about, oh my God.
It's all marketing, right? Marketing and painting the right picture, and it's messaging. It's it's marketing, and these guys are really good marketers, and that's why you will never see any of these climate activists or leftists in general on a debate stage with the opposition. They'll never do it because they will never win. Their arguments are always, 1 inch deep. They're very superficial arguments. They can't, because they're very good at making grand statements. Oh yeah, ExxonMobil is solely responsible for polar bears. Now what they can make these grand statements because there's no pushback. These people on TV giving the news. Let's make no mistake. These guys, these are not journalists. Okay, these are entertainers. Okay, they only have the job because they're good at reading a teleprompter.
There's very few of them that are actually investigative journalists. They might have a journalism degree, but sitting in a studio under the bright lights with all their hair and makeup done perfectly like that doesn't mean that they're actually doing their job as a journalist. And it's pretty rare that they're actually doing that.
And very rarely does that particular organization do its own news reporting. These are news aggregators, right? You get a small town TV station in Iowa. They're not out there creating a story about anything, right? They go on the news wires, news services, and they find, what news is out there by so and so. Look, I do the same thing, right? I'm a news aggregator. I'll go on, I'll find out the news that's put out there, and then I'll comment on it. And then I'll share the news. Now I'll usually strip it down to the truth, or I'll criticize the patina of the story. So it's a way of, it's how you look at anything, right? It's about being a discerning consumer of news. You have to be a critical thinker. You got to learn how to think for yourself and ask the right questions and follow people who you trust. And you shouldn't be trusting any of these mainstream news sources. So these people, so when you, and like these are very sophisticated people at messaging. They know how to get the messaging across. They know how to put the right pictures up to tell the story, and they're not going to go very deep into the story. They're not going to explain why. They're not going to explain why last Wednesday was the hottest day in the last 120,000 years. That's a pretty bold statement. All right, you would think that there would be, I'm sitting watching. Yeah, okay, and why?
Did you die?
Yeah.
No, you're here. You're reporting on it. You didn't die. So what? It was a hot day. So it was a cold day like 6 months ago too. You didn't die. So
it's hot in July in New York City. Boy. Breaking news.
It's the arrogance of human beings, right? Like the planet Earth has existed for 4 billion years or whatever it is. I don't know how they know that. Apparently that's what scientists tell me, but everything that scientists tell me seems to be wrong these days. And I just scratch my head and I don't know what to believe anymore. You have to have some faith in institutions. And you said it at the start as well. A lot of it's filled with half truths. So half of it is true, but some of it, could be just bullshit and they just make up the other half of it. But the reality is humans are just really arrogant to think that you're here for less than 100 years. But the planet Earth has been here for billions of years, but you're here for less than 100 years and you think that you can affect this place? Are you kidding me? You think that we're really making a difference to the weather here? And that's the strangest thing for me is that these people think that no matter what they say, that they can control the weather. But they no matter what, you're never, ever going to be able to control the weather. You can't control the weather. And it doesn't matter if even if humans are, if you give them the benefit of the doubt, if humans are affecting climate change and we are changing the weather, there's nothing that you can do about it. We cannot change the weather. And so the argument is just all for naught. Because no matter what happens, if the conditions are right, the clouds are going to be there and it'll rain. And if the conditions are right and there's no clouds, it won't rain And there's nothing that you can do to prevent that or to accelerate that or to slow it down. It just doesn't make any sense to me. It's just the most ridiculous argument in the whole world. And
well, that's
tell
because
me that
that's because you're a white supremacist. So
I'm going to be locked up for being a climate change denier. The climate changes every like second of the day, and you don't have the sophistication or the measuring equipment to actually tell me how much it changes in a 24-hour period, because you can't measure it in all the different locations.
Look, I'm sweating bullets right now, but that's because it's August 1st in Minnesota. But I'll tell you, I can tell you with certainty that 5 months from today, I'm going to be shivering. I'm going to be freezing my ass off. Why? Because it's going to be, January in Minnesota.
That's just how it is. All of this stuff is kind of funny, and it's funny how stupid people are and how gullible they actually are to believe BBC and Juice Media that some random mining company in Australia is responsible for the ocean rising in the Southwest Pacific. These people they take us for fools, and it wouldn't be, it's funny because it's so foolish, but it's not funny at the same time because they're going to use this to create all sorts of discourse in our society.
That's right.
They're going to use this to.
That's right. Go ahead.
Yeah, I don't know where it ends up. I think where it ends up is they're trying to take away energy here in Australia. And it's not because of some green zealotry where these people will think that we're going to save the planet, even though Australia is less than 1% of all the emissions. It's not anything to do with that. Once the government controls access to energy and your ability to have energy, meaning you can only charge your mobile phone between this hour and this hour because there's a brownout, because there's not enough electricity. If you talk to anyone that's ever been to Iraq and they were in the Iraqi conflict, any veterans, they'll tell you that the power only came on in the afternoon. And then everyone's like, oh my God, turn the washing machine on. We've got to cook some dinner. And they're just using the power in the afternoon because the power plants were bombed and destroyed, and the power lines and the transmission lines were bombed and destroyed. And there wasn't enough power generation to help the entire society. And we're going to that point. The Australian government is taking Australia to that point where they're systematically turning the power off and there's nothing to replace it. And once the power is off and there's nothing to replace it, they will control and dictate who gets power when. And that will destroy the economy because that will destroy businesses and small business. Imagine if the power only came on from 2 o'clock in the afternoon to 5 o'clock in the afternoon like it did in Iraq. Then, how would you run your business? How would you operate the manufacturing that you had? And if people can't start work till 2 o'clock in the morning and they only work till 5 in the evening, the productivity, the output goes away, everything goes away. And then if there's no power, then there's no ability to pump gas into a petrol station, so I can't get fuel into a car. But more importantly, I can't get fuel into trucks. And every single society on planet Earth runs on the back of trucks. Every single thing that you're looking at in your existence, wherever you are on planet Earth, at any moment of the day has been on a truck. And if we don't have electricity because the diesel pumps don't operate to get fuel into petrol tankers and into trucks, then society will completely collapse. It goes away. And it's funny, climate change and all of these zealots and these idiots out there doing this are funny, but it's not funny because the seriousness of it when you take it to its nth degree is absolute, complete, total destruction of our society.
It's dystopia. Listen, this is let's put our cards on the table here. Let's talk about what this is all comes down to. What's the center of all this? What's the whole point of all of this?
Control.
It's about the globalists wanting complete control. These are people who they don't like the idea of sovereign countries. Hence, we signed this. United States of America, the most powerful country in America, supposedly, we signed a treaty with the WHO, giving them authority that if they find a health situation that's bad enough, they can dictate to us, to our citizens, what we should be doing. So we're giving away control to unelected parties in the distance, right? And Brexit, that's what Brexit was all about. The Brits finally woke up and they wanted out of the EU. But that's what the EU philosophy is. That's what there's ordination. That's what the IMF philosophy is, World Bank, World Health Organization, the United Nations. It's about deglobalization. They want a one world entity out there. And they won't be elected. The people who are ultimately going to be in charge of our lives are going to be people who are not elected. That's what they're shooting for. And now that's a very ambitious goal. So they have to do very drastic things in order to shake us out of our regular existence, which means they've got to take over the food supply. They got to take over the energy supply. They got to take over the financial system. They have to be able to control where and when you can travel to, how often you can travel. They want a digital ID. They want to know everything about you. They want to know what you're spending your money on, and they want to be able to approve what you're spending your money on. That's why they need the CBDCs and other forms of digitalization. They want you digitized. They want you with a little chip in your hand that has every little piece of your personal information for your entire life. Everything you do is going to be monitored and controlled and approved. And that's what. And with the advent of AI, they're going to be able to hit these objectives a lot faster than they thought. And but getting people to fork over their freedoms, that's a pretty big ask. So you have to make things dire. You have to paint the most dystopian picture, the biggest consequence you can imagine if you don't give up your freedom. Things like if you do not, right? If you don't turn it over, the world's going to boil.
I got news for you, man. The world has never boiled. It might be boiling hot somewhere in the Sahara Desert, or in the desert in Saudi Arabia or some shit like that, or maybe even in Darwin, for heaven's sake, or in Minnesota. It's boiling hot, but nobody's boiling to death, man.
You ever see that movie? You ever see a movie at Christmas time called Christmas Story?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. So there's a scene. This kind of reminds me of. There's a scene in Christmas Story where the kid he broke protocol. Right. When he says, "I dare." A triple dog dare you, right? There's supposed to be a progression. And he noticed that he went right to a triple dog dare you, and he noticed that he broke the protocol. And this guy said, "Oh, the world's boiling." Everyone else trying to say, hey, "Come on, man, you got there too fast. We're not finished with climate change yet."
We had to heat up first before we boiled. Yeah. The temperature needed to kind of we're simmering first, and then we're boiling. Before we're fully boiling. I want to close it out with this point, because I think it's really important, is these weirdos on the left, these greeny weirdos, these communists, these socialists, and these collectivists on the left are the people saying that we're all going to boil to death, all jokes aside, because they think that that's serious. They think that a mining company is responsible for the ocean rising, and they think in their arrogance and hubris that they can control the weather. But the reality is, even if they were true, and I'll give them the benefit of the doubt for a moment here, even if it was true, and there's no way to connect the dots to say that the bushfires in Canada or Australia or a flood in Greece has got anything to do with climate change. You just cannot prove it. You can't prove it. And you can't say the weather events are more frequent, because you can't prove it. You can't prove that the weather events that happened 100 years ago have anything to do with human-induced climate change. You just simply can't prove it. It's all bullshit. So just for a second, if I entertain what you're saying for a second, what you're going to tell me is in 50 years' time that the world is going to be a different place because of climate change. And you're worried about the future, right? That's pretty much where they go with it. They're worried that this is going to happen. But the reality is, if we look to a place like Sri Lanka, we can see what happens when ESG policies are implemented at scale. And you don't have to worry about 50 years in the future, because Sri Lanka collapsed under its own weight of its own absolute complete stupidity, like these stupid green zealots. Sri Lanka collapsed under it, and it collapsed in less than 18 months. So the people that are in charge want the world to collapse in 18 months. They want the complete and total destruction of society in a small amount of time. And that's what these greenies don't understand. They want to destroy the economy. And the reason they want to destroy the economy, because then all of you greenies are then dependent on the government. And when you're dependent on the government for your paycheck, and you're dependent on the government to put food in your mouth and a loaf of bread, then you're subservient to them and you're completely irrelevant to them. The whole thing is a depopulation agenda. If they wanted to depopulate the world properly, and they wanted to get rid of people on planet Earth, they would allow climate change. But they know that climate change is not going to kill people on planet Earth. They know that the only thing that's going to depopulate planet Earth to 500 million people from the 8 billion people that we have is to destroy the food supply And they're doing that. They've done that by reducing the amount of fertilizer in the world by 25%, by sanctioning Russia and stopping all of that happening coming out of Europe because of the war in Europe. So all of that has gone away. And the people that are going to suffer from that are in the third world. When there's no more food, there's 25% less fertilizer in the world, which means there's 4/5 less food in the world. And from the people that rely on that, then that creates mass starvation. And then all of a sudden, I'm looking to the government to go, well, why isn't there any food? This happened in Sri Lanka. Sri Lanka was not allowed to use fertilizer, so they went back to organic farming, and they weren't able to produce enough food to feed their population. There wasn't enough power in Sri Lanka to turn the electricity on to supply to their population because they had these ESG requirements. And they think, these greenies think that a mining company in Western Australia is making the ocean rise in the Southwest Pacific. It's got nothing to do with a mining company creating pollution or so-called climate change. It's got everything to do with the complete and total destruction of your way of life. But you're the biggest hypocrite on planet Earth because you get on a plane, you drive a car, you turn the power on. It just doesn't make any sense how stupid you are. And you are so, if you're a greenie and you think the climate change is real, you are so unbelievably stupid that when it comes to you having to stand in a line for bread, I'm just going to fucking laugh at you. When I've got my spear gun and I'm going to the ocean to go and get real food, and I'm not reliant on the government for anything, and I don't need anybody else for anything. I'm just there because I'm a sovereign person because I could think for myself. And you greenies are so stupid that you think you can control the weather. You can't. No one can control the weather.
Well said. You know, well, in one story, real quick before we go, I can give you one story that illustrates that the climate change activists, zealots, they do not believe it. They do not believe it themselves, and
because they're still driving around in cars.
Well, yeah, and what are the big? All their big solutions do not work. The idea, look at the big solar panel project they had in Australia. Absolutely stupid idea, and it was demonstrably stupid. But they did it anyway, right? Because it had the agenda, but my favorite is looking at the electric vehicles. Electric vehicles are the evil of our time.
They are.
You know what kind of toxic material goes into these batteries, people? Do you know how they get these toxic materials? They have these little kids going into the Congo, digging it out of the ground with their bare hands.
Hey. You're going to get us canceled completely when you're saying the truth.
Electric fence, sorry. Okay. But these batteries are made out of toxic materials. There is a ship at sea right now loaded with 500 electric vehicles that started on fire, and you can't put the fire out because flames, this is a chemical reaction.
Yep. Yeah, it's not a fire like, it's the fire triangle, heat, fuel, and oxygen. You can't take away one of those things. It won't work because it's a chemical fire. You got to let it burn itself out.
Right. So this ship is probably going to sink into the ocean with tons of toxic material. And who knows what kind of destruction that's going to have. No
greenie's going to talk about that. We just needed the electric cars here, but
so the solutions people they come up with don't work. They're stupid. But Ford Motor Company, they're going to lose $4.2 billion this year on EVs. $4.2 billion.
Nobody wants them, man. If the government subsidies go away, then the electric car is going to cost you $150,000, and people are like, well, why would I do that? You're kidding me, are you? Yeah.
Last year they lost $1.6 billion. So they lost $1.6 billion last year and $4.2 billion this year. Nobody wants these pieces of shit, but the government is mandating that these car companies make X percent of the cars into EVs. So
you can't make this shit up, right? It's the same thing here in Australia. They turn natural gas off here in Australia, but we export natural gas to China, who use the natural gas and use our coal to make non-recyclable wind turbines and non-recyclable solar panels made by slave labor to come back to Australia, where we have to spend hundreds of millions of dollars building roads and bridges to put them all up. And it takes them 25 years to get a return on their investment. And by the time they get the ROI, they're completely obsolete and we have to pull them down, but we can't recycle them. We have to do the whole cycle again.
Yep.
It is, but but the mining company in Western Australia is making the ocean rise in the Southwest Pacific. What the fuck is wrong with these people? Like, you can't be serious that that's what you really think is actually going on. And you can't show me how that mining company is causing the ocean to rise. You can't prove it to me. All you're doing is just making a statement that is completely untrue. And I can go out there and make a statement that's completely untrue by saying, how can you prove that? And they're saying, well, you're just doing the same thing to me. But no, I'm not making a claim that electric vehicles are going to solve climate change. I'm not making a claim that electric vehicles are clean. More carbon comes from an electric vehicle than any footprint of any petrol-driven car. It's just a lie to tell me that it's actually greener. It's just a lie to tell me that this is going to be a solution for something. And when you talk about car accidents, let's go down that road for a second. Electric vehicles are so much heavier than a normal vehicle. If you have a rear ender, if you get rear-ended by an electric vehicle, you're in big trouble, right? Yeah. Because the vehicle has so much more inertia because it's heavier, and it's going to actually destroy the crumple zones of your petrol car.
Yeah, and they say that if every car in America was an EV, the roads would deteriorate 30% faster than otherwise because of the weight of these EVs. Mm. So you have that cost of having to replace your roads more frequently.
What it comes down to, Ed, is you said it really well. Is they're a sophisticated enemy, and they're using sophisticated psyop techniques to get inside your head to create the worst case scenario. And the worst possible case scenario is your death, that you're going to boil to death, and you see the map on TV, which is bright red, and it looks like you are boiling to death, and you go outside and go, yeah, it's hot. I believe it. Yeah, maybe I am going to boil to death. Maybe this is... No human being has ever boiled to death because of the sun. Human beings have fainted because of the sun. They've passed out because of the sun, and maybe their heart has stopped because they've got heat stroke, but they didn't boil to death. Nobody boiled. Your blood doesn't boil. If you suffer from serious heat stroke, it's not a medical condition. In order for something to boil, it needs to reach 100 degrees Celsius. Your blood is never going to reach 100 degrees Celsius. If your blood gets above 42 or 43 degrees Celsius, you get a temperature and you'll be light up in bed, like shaken like a leaf in your bed. It's just not true.
I was just waiting for the follow-up questions. What do you mean it's boiling? What does that mean?
What a fucking idiot.
I'm going to make a big statement here to the world, but there will be no questions afterward.
I'm going straight back to drink my oat latte to get into my helicopter to go to the airport to get in my private jet to travel on the other side of planet Earth. And by the way, that was more carbon that you will use in your entire lifetime. Yeah. But I have to be efficient. It's the best use of my time, man. All right, that might be a good time to close it out. Nice work, Ed. Good report and a fun topic to talk about. We'll see you in the next one. It's bye for now.